Also, why is Ukraine on fire? Jeanette Francis is going to take a good look at a bad situation unfolding in Eastern Europe. But first... Manus Island. 2 inquiries will be held into the riots at the detention centre there. One by the Australian government and another one by the Papua New Guinean government. It comes off the back of days of strife in the Australian-run centre, which so far has seen 1 Iranian man killed as a result of a head injury and more than 70 other detainees injured, along with allegations in the local media that PNG police beat the now-dead man. Both sides of politics have committed to their policy of offshore processing, but human rights groups are now calling for greater access. Next, to the Sochi Winter Olympics that continues to make headlines for all of the wrong reasons. Overnight, 2 members of the Russian protest group Pussy Riot were detained by police in Sochi. The women were in the spandex wonderland that is the Winter Olympics to perform their latest protest song, Putin Will Teach You How to Love the Motherland. Of course, Pussy Riot have been in prison for some time. They were released only in December when they were serving a 2-year sentence for hooliganism after staging a protest in a Moscow cathedral. In this incident, though, the police accused the Pussy Rioters of robbing from their hotel, but ultimately no charges were laid and they were released hours later. Still, the women have accused the police of brutality and say their arrest was entirely because they are activists.
Только нас привезли сюда, нам не предъявили никакого основания, по которому мы сюда привезены. Нас просто придержали здесь 10 часов для того, чтобы у нас не было никакой возможности сделать здесь политическое высказывание на тему этой Сочинской Олимпиады, которая полностью тотально коррумпированная, во время которой сажают людей.
Next to Venezuela, where the opposition leader has been arrested on charges of creating unrest. In dramatic scenes in the capital, Caracas, Leopoldo Lopez delivered a defiant speech before giving himself up to soldiers. The student-led protests began nearly a week ago, and the arrest of Lopez will most likely galvanise his supporters. But why exactly have these protests broken out across the Central American country? Well, inflation has skyrocketed in the last year, corruption is rife, product shortages are common, and violent crime is frequent. In fact, 1 person is killed in Venezuela every 20 minutes. The protesters are calling on the resignation of President Maduro. Maduro was elected following the death of charismatic President Hugo Chavez last year, and he has a huge support base, many of whom were out in force to show their allegiance. Earlier this year, Maduro expelled US embassy officials accusing the Obama administration of supporting the opposition protesters, a charge the US has denied. And I believe it was the journalist and activist Margaret Fuller who once said that today's reader is tomorrow's leader. Well, people, meet your future boss.
3. Next 10 years, many researchers seem to lose interest.
This clunky-looking piece of art school jewellery is actually a teeny-tiny computer capable of reading. Using audio-visual software, the finger-mounted storyteller uses your digits as a guide across the written page, and then with the help of the very latest in technological wizardry, it slowly and tenuously reads aloud in the dead, emotionless tone of an unfeeling robot.
Rewind time and interactive aspects of computer.
Obviously, this is just an early test model. I mean, just wait until you get Stephen Fry's voice in that sucker. I'll have to pry it out of my cold, dead fingers. Still, even now, think of the potential this has for those suffering from visual impairment, second language speakers, or, just the lazy. In fact, it might just be a huge breakthrough for the future of the written word, and it could even mean the writing is on the wall for Braille, writing that users of the finger-mounted computer will enjoy hearing read out in dead robot voice. And environmentalists have proven yet again that they can protest pretty much anything, including environmentally friendly sources of energy. The world's largest solar farm opened in the Mojave Desert last week, and it's capable of generating enough energy to power 140,000 homes And it turns out frying dozens of poor birds. See, its location gets virtually unbroken sun for most of the year, and its mirrors can generate heat of up to 500 degrees Celsius, which is apparently scorching flocks of native birds that just so happen to be flying overhead. Some environmental groups are asking for the project to be dismantled, but just how much carbon would it take to dismantle the project, and how much potentially clean energy would be lost? It's like an environmentalist Sophie's choice. Also, nobody wants to piss off that powerful birds lobby, because you know how they get down. Here in Australia, we don't often talk about Ukraine, but last night they witnessed what some are calling their bloodiest day in more than 22 years since they won their independence from the Soviet Union. Right now, 18 people are dead. But the real question is why? Well, here's Jeanette Francis.
No matter where in the world you are, the picture is the same. Live streams, Twitter, the 24-hour news cycle, they all bring us closer to the action than ever before. But luckily, not too close. The reality on the streets of Ukraine is still very far removed from the offices, homes and buses we're watching it from. It's a violent and bloody scene. So far, more than a dozen people are dead and hundreds more injured after protests erupted overnight in the capital. Riot police moved into Independence Square in the heart of Kiev, firing water cannons and stun grenades. Protesters responded with petrol bombs. What's happening now has been a long time coming as the Ukraine grapples with being caught between a Russian rock and a European hard place. Tensions first flared in November when the country's president, Viktor Yanukovych, rejected a much-needed finance deal with the European Union in favour of one with Russia. The move was backed by parts of Ukraine where economic and cultural ties with Russia are still strong, but the rest of the country wants closer ties with Europe and eventual EU membership, a move Ukraine has seen bring increased economic opportunity to the equally depressed economies of its fellow former Soviet states. This is essentially the manifestation of a country divided on its future, a divided country that mirrors a divided international community. Russia has accused Western leaders of meddling, and they've threatened sanctions and condemned the harsh crackdown. Police brutality is nothing new in Ukraine. This viral video shows a protester being forced to strip and stand in the snow as police take his picture. And last month, the government somehow identified thousands of demonstrators and their mobile numbers and sent them this text at the same time. It was to coincide with new legislation banning mass demonstrations. But behind all the politics come the people, the everyday Ukrainians who are now bearing the brunt of a conflict that could push their country closer and closer to civil war.
Thanks, Jan Fran. And if you want to know more about the facts and stats of what's going on in Ukraine, we have all of the details over at sbs.com.au/news. Stay right where you are, or we'll be right back in just a second.